Welcome to WO50 Women Over 50 in Body Wisdom and Wellness.
Hello, my name is Corrine, and I'm here with my BFF, Eddi. And today our topic is deep listening, how to tune in, how to trust, and follow your intuition.
Oh, it was a great conversation. It was a great conversation. I really listened to you, Corinne.
You did. You did. Yep. And deep listening can be to our bodies. We kind of ended up with that. Deep listening to friends, as Eddi just mentioned. Deep listening to ourselves, like our intuition, the flow of our life. Like a lot of different ways we need to listen in life.
Yeah, active listening on every level. I loved it. Great conversation.
Hope you enjoy it. Hola.
Hola.
¿Cómo estás?
Très bien. I think I just went into French, didn't I?
You did. Okay. That's what you do. So you have not tuned into the wrong channel. This is WO50 still. But I just was dealing with my gardener who's from Ecuador. So it sometimes the 5 words in Spanish that I know will come out.
Yes, and we're working really hard on our Duolingo program.
Oh, you are?
No.
Because I love Duolingo.
I do too, but I haven't lately.
Yeah, it takes consistency.
Yes, it does. But I remember we were both, because I was going to Spain or Italy somewhere, and I was on the Duolingo. Yeah, it was Spain, and we were throwing words back and forth at each other. So it's really fun. It is fun. It's actually, learning a language is really good for the brain. It's really good
for the brain. Learning anything new. Do you know
but you have to listen. You have to listen.
No, that was a leap, Eddi. I don't know. That was like a quantum leap. Nothing. You made it sound like it. You were really convincing that was smoothly going into it.
Okay. Let's do that. Let's try again.
You have to listen more. Yes. Might I suggest deep listening?
Deep listening, active listening.
So our topic today is deep listening, how to tune in, trust, and follow your intuition. I think that is a really great topic to talk about because we talk about all the time, listen to yourself, follow your intuition, go with the flow of your life. But like, how do you do that? So Eddi and I think, we can talk about our processes, how we've learned to trust, in the ways that we do deep listening. And so hopefully it'll be helpful for everybody else too.
And it's funny when we decided on this topic, I remember growing up with a family that listening isn't their best attribute.
Most families.
Yes, right. I big Irish family in Newfoundland. So I was always considered the real quiet one in the family because I couldn't get a word in. But when I can get a word in, it's great. But so there was never a practice of listening. It was wait for someone to inhale and then jump in with what you need to say.
Yeah.
But now it's interesting. Even today, I had some neighbors, they were walking down the street and her husband kept interrupting. Like she was telling a story and they were both talking to me at the same time. And I have really practiced this, and my family have been wonderful for me to be able to practice this and with awareness, right? Which is the gift. And I'm listening. And what I decided to do, I couldn't listen to both of them. And he was really wanting to hold the conversation. And I looked at her and she was talking. So I actually engaged with her. I locked eyes, I looked in, and I was listening to her. And what started to happen was his voice started to fade out. So my ear wasn't even, being pulled that way. And you know how you're polite and you acknowledge and go, oh yeah, because as soon as you do that, you've just kind of broke that engagement, right? That active listening. And I think when you're really attentive, I don't know, it shows you know that they matter. It's respect. It's I don't know, it's beautiful.
Yeah, well, everybody wants to be heard. We all need to know we matter when we walk into a room. And listening is we've talked about it probably before on the podcast. We've touched on it just because it's so important, and it's not something I think we do very well in this world. And,
Mhm.
I think, a lot of the people I work with, and even myself, like, I have to take a conscious effort. Like, everything I teach is because I've learned it, in my life. And most of the time in a conversation, especially when a conversation isn't as important. So you decided it was an important conversation to you. So you tuned in and you made a choice listening to her. But you could have as easily, or maybe if it was 10 years ago, would have just let them both talk and not really listen to either one. Like, there's a lot of
Absolutely.
choices to do, and then just wait and then comment on maybe the last thing you hear one of them say or whatever.
Mhm.
And so most of the time, if it's a casual conversation, what we tend to, our mind wanders a lot,
Mhm.
and we sort of are waiting, thinking about what we want to say, right? Instead of really deeply listening. And when you really deeply listen, sometimes if you're really deeply listening, you might have 5 things that you want to say if they go on for several minutes. But instead of trying to remember what you want to say, just keep with them. Just
Mhm.
keep with them and keep listening. And then when they stop talking, or where there's a break and it's time for you, whatever you need to say will be there. And
Yeah.
it is like a meditation, I'm telling you, because we've done that on the podcast before. It's like, I'll have something, you'll spark something that you're saying, and I'm like, oh, I got to remember say that. But and I've learned to just kind of let it go, because it'll come back if it's that important.
Mhm. And you've called me out on that a few times, which is good in a good way because I have been that way. I have to have that next thing to say, right? And I really trust that that's going to come back in.
Yeah.
And you have said that like just keep engaging, just keep the focus in, the distraction, it's okay. Even if you goof and you forget, right? You
Yeah.
what you were going to say, it'll come back in,
Yeah.
but maybe something even better will come back
That's
in.
right. That's
We
right.
got to be okay with that vulnerability too, right?
Yes,
Just
that's
going,
yeah.
egg in my face. Oops, okay.
Yeah. I forgot what I was gonna say. Okay, so
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like somebody always feeling like they have to have the answer or, and I've gone through periods like that. And
Mhm.
now, this is the beautiful thing about getting older is that I really don't mind saying, I don't know. I'm
Mhm.
gonna I'm gonna check on that for you. I
Mhm.
don't have the answer to that right now.
Mhm.
And it's in there somewhere, but
Mhm.
it's okay. You
Mhm.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with pauses too.
Not a thing unless you're doing a podcast. It's not a podcast. Actually, it was really funny today. I went in and Strat was my partner. He was listening to one of our podcasts,
Oh,
and it
yeah?
was about the lady of the lake when we were in
Oh,
the talent contest.
yeah.
He was laughing so hard. I walked in and I'm like, "What are you laughing at?" He said, "You too, both of you."
That's so cute.
I know. I was like, "You haven't listened to that? That's been out a while. What's wrong with you? Get with the programming."
Oh, but that's okay. I mean, because
No, I'm
there's
kidding.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but I mean, yeah, because I wouldn't expect him to listen to it at all, you
No,
know?
he's not a woman over 50.
Yeah. Even though many women under 50 do listen to our podcast, but
And men too, because they
yeah.
said, I have some patients who say, I tune into your podcast because he said, you two have a lot of really good information and it gives me some insight.
Oh, it's so great. I love to
Yeah.
hear that.
Yeah.
I love to
It's
hear that.
beautiful. So it's for
Oh,
anybody, really.
mhm. And they're
Yeah.
probably doing deep listening when they're listening to the podcast, you know? There's so many ways we can listen and tune in, because really most of the time we're living in our heads. They say there's 65 to 85,000 thoughts in a day that each one of us has. That's a
Yeah.
lot of thoughts. That's like, and then if somebody has ADHD, then they
Mhm.
have more than that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. The thought is always going. The mind is always going.
Hmm.
Yeah. When,
And so you
yeah.
can't control the thoughts in your head. That's not,
Mhm.
if you've ever meditated before, that's the first thing you realize. There's no controlling that goes on. What you're doing is you're noticing, because most of the time we walk around in life not realizing that there's like this constant narrative going on in our heads. We don't
Mm.
realize it's there until we go to sleep at night and try, if we can't sleep, or if we do have a meditation practice, we notice all the thoughts. Or if we're doing yoga, and then it'll all of a sudden be quiet inside, and we're like, oh, that's different. And that's why people like nature, walking in nature, because they're interested, they're breathing, they're looking at
Yeah.
the birds, and their mind is slowing down, because that's sort of, you kind of have to be tricky that way with it. You have to be, the antidote for the noise going on in your head is the awareness of right here, right now. So,
Mhm.
and it can happen even though you're really present and really listening, there's still thoughts going on at the same time. But just like you did, you tuned into her and he started to fade out. That's
Mhm.
exactly what the same thing that happens in our head. There's many different Corinne's inside my head. There's many different
Mhm.
Eddies inside
Yeah.
your head, but there's
Mhm.
actually only one choice maker, Eddie. There's only one CEO that's the choice maker that decides to listen.
Mhm.
So we don't have any control over the many, many thoughts that we have, but we do have control over if we decide to listen. And you made that decision with your
Mhm.
neighbors to listen
Mhm.
to her.
Yes.
And then you were able to have a conversation.
Yes. Yes. And it's quite the connection, you know? It's
Yeah.
quite a connection. And there's an energy with that. And when you said like nature, when people do a nature walk, it's because that's a connection for them, right?
Hmm.
They get out in it for it ground, they get very grounded, or they
Well, they're
hear the
more
birds.
interested. They're more
Yeah.
interested, right? So
Yeah.
when you're driving in the car and there's traffic, you might be listening to the radio or listening to your head, what's going on, like what you're going to do that day, and or debating about an argument you had with somebody. But as soon as
Mhm.
you like get out of your car and you pulled up to a park, and you're going to take a walk and there's flowers in bloom and the
Mhm.
birds, then you start to notice them more, and just like you did when you were walking with your neighbors, there was all that noise, and then you
Mhm.
just focused in. So we
Mhm.
never ever have any control over the amount of thoughts that is in our head. We just don't.
Yeah.
But what we do have 100% control over is what we decide to focus on, what we decide to listen to, what then we even decide to believe.
That is so true. That is so true. And just think about that for a second. The thought you think can change your whole day.
Yeah, what you decide to believe about, because you have a lot of different choices at any different moment about how you
Mhm.
decide to take some information in when you deeply listen. But when you're deeply listening, there's just more intention there, more presence there. And there's many things that we can deeply listen to. We can deeply listen to music. We can deeply listen when we're walking with a friend. We can deeply listen when we're meditating. We can
Mm.
deeply listen, in a business meeting. You know, when maybe we don't want to be at somewhere, but and our mind wanders, it's like, no, come back, because there might be a piece there. Like what Eckhart Tolle says, I love this, is that we unconsciously believe that what we're thinking about is more important than the present moment.
Yeah.
We unconsciously believe that what's going on in our head is more important than the present moment. And it's not ever true. the
No.
the only thing that matters, no matter how mundane it is the present moment.
Yes,
But
because
that's
again, you're in that present moment, and the thought you're thinking, if you're going into future thinking with it, even what I'm gonna say next,
Mhm.
you've gone out of present moment. You've gone into wherever, whatever lane that takes you in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the many lanes of the head of the, I mean, there's just so the mind, if we had a megaphone that was blasting out everything that was going through, or the narrative that's going on in the head totally unconsciously all day long, it would
Yeah.
be mortifying.
Yeah.
What comes, the crazy stuff that comes into each of us. I
Yeah.
I tell people when I teach them how to meditate, I'm like, my thoughts are just as crazy as yours. My
Hmm.
mind can be all over the place. The only difference is that I don't believe my thinking. I use my mind, it doesn't use me.
Yeah, that's a great statement. That's great.
That's one of
Yeah.
the benefits that deep listening and meditation have done for me.
Hmm. Or as Adyashanti says, the answer's in the silence. Every
Yeah.
time I say that, it brings it whoop, so
Yeah.
many things, right?
Does. Yeah.
Yeah.
You just even that
It can,
statement, whether you get it or not, the whole point is that you can't get it really. You have to listen. It's like the
yeah, you have to
answers are in
listen.
the
The answer,
silence. Yeah.
it's silent. It's silent. Well, it's like even I remember someone who went to a bamboo retreat, and I'm going, and this is years ago, and I'm like, what did you do at the bamboo retreat? And they were like, well, we set up our tents and we slept outside underneath the bamboo, and we heard it grow. We could actually hear the bamboo grow. I'm like, what? What? They're like, oh yeah, you have to the whole practice for 2 days or 3 days or 5 days, however long it was. But every night they could hear the bamboo make like this sound, like it was stretching.
That's
Now
amazing.
that's intense listening, right?
That's deep listening.
That's deep listening. That's a practice. That's so
Wow.
yeah. So even in meditation, like even if you had that experience to sit in a meditation and have that thought come in of, oh, I was sitting and I heard this bamboo and this is what it sounded like. And this is how I felt when that happened. And huh, you're in that moment. You're
Yeah.
in that experience
Well,
again.
Tim, what I would say, I mean, that's a perfect example, which is so you. Is here I'm like into the listening the bamboo stretching and Eddie's having a dialogue about the bamboo stretching. That's that in lies the difference of you and
That's why she's a meditation yoga teacher, speaker, guru, and I speak and talk to people on science and herbs and
health.
nutrition. And
Mhm.
yeah, it's like someone said to me, how does the food actually get into the cells? I'm like, well, you have to listen to me. I have to say something that will mean something where they will get it, right? That's active listening.
Oh yeah, you do it naturally, and I feel like when if you can find out how you deeply listen in your life, then you can learn how to do it in other ways. So, Eddie, I'm sure naturally you've been doing that as a naturopathic doctor, being one on one with people for so many years. When they come in, you have to deeply listen, and sometimes I say it's
Yes.
almost like a deer poised on the top of a meadow. The deer, his ears are going all over the place, but his skin too. It's like he's listening
Yeah.
with his entire being, not
Mhm.
just his ears.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I bet you that's what you do with your patients. You're
Well, it's
feeling with your whole being.
yeah, and I know you do it the other way as well. You listen with your whole being. And yes, I tap into all the senses because when I work with somebody and they're wanting to change something about their habits, their lifestyle, I call it the process now, right? The process. Like even our cell repair is a process.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say something, I feel it in my being where they're feeling it. Like if
Mm,
they heard it, I see a reaction in their face. If they feel it, and they move in a certain way, or there's a crying, or there's, oh my God, I get what you just said.
mm-hmm.
There has to be an exchange, but I also have to be present to hear them.
Yeah.
Because if
Oh,
somebody
yeah.
says, don't tell me to make smoothies because I hate smoothies. And then the first thing I tell them to do is blend up a smoothie.
Yeah. Then they're not going to, yeah.
That's not very helpful. I'm not a
Mm-mm.
very good naturopathic doc.
If you're doing that. Yeah.
If I'm
Yeah.
not listening, or I don't swallow pills and I have,
Mm-hmm.
their pill support ready to go, supplements. Like I go, oh, they don't swallow pill. Well, we got to do everything through food. They don't want to take supplements. They don't, so there's a different, yeah, you got to listen. We have
Mm-hmm.
to listen and I've been practicing that my whole life
Yeah.
because my conditioning,
Mm-hmm.
right at the beginning, like we talked earlier, was just to try to get your words in when you could. And now it's like, well, that's not so important anymore.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And yet
Yeah.
still it's a practice though. I mean, I'm same thing. As long as I've been meditating and as much as I know this, my mind can wander in a conversation,
Oh, absolutely.
you know? And it's not as rich of a conversation if I allow my mind to wander for too long. Usually I can catch it and I'm like, no, 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 I want to be listening to this. I want to tune in. And so and that's really what meditation is all about.
Yeah.
You know, if you have a mantra or your breath or whatever, it's like your mind wanders, you gently come back. Your mind is the same as
Oh,
a
yeah. Like,
conversation.
and even when we're together, you know when my mind is wandering. You're like, Eddie, we're recording something here. Stop picking your fingernails. Okay. So,
Do you think though when you're doing that that you weren't listening? Because I have a feeling you were still listening.
oh, I was listening.
Yeah, that's
I
what I
was
thought.
listening. Oh,
Yeah.
yes, but is and was it active listening?
Yeah, like, well, as a participant in the conversation, and we're talking about if you haven't heard, I think we've talked about this before, but when we were in Sicily and we tried doing like an audio because we didn't the video, whatever, and we didn't end up publishing the episode, but Eddie wasn't used to like being in person when we were recording, and so she was talking, and then all of a sudden I started talking, and then she was like totally not looking into my eyes and then it seemed like she wasn't listening because she was like picking her fingers and her toes
Filing
and
my
just doing, but
nails
yeah.
and
And
checking.
I was looking, hey, hey, what, trying to catch her. I paused the recording. I'm like, hey, can I, because, it's kind of like, because she was used
Yeah.
to seeing me on camera looking at,
Looking straight
so
at her, not sitting in the room next to each other. And just, it was like, because it's like when you're sitting with somebody having a conversation, a lot of times we're pouring a cup of tea or we're cooking or
right,
we're
right,
actively doing something, right?
right.
So, and here, you and I were like looking at each other right now.
Yeah,
We're in
yeah,
our spaces, nobody's interrupting. It's a lot easier, isn't it, to listen and be
yeah,
really engaged and attentive and
yeah.
mindful and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. I think they say multitasking is a myth. And so I think deep, and then so what other deep listening is? I liked we before we came on today, you were giving the example of when you were younger and came to Nashville and before we learned how to do deep listening and the universe started flowing from music
Oh, yes,
to
because we were talking about one of our friends who we feel has been her flow in one direction is really happening. Doors are opening and it's challenging. She's working really hard and she is an amazing success, but
hmm
will continue to expand on this gift. And then I had a kind of an aha moment and I went, well, I kind of did that. I kind of, left medicine and moved to Nashville and started on the music path. And it was challenging back in it was the early 90s, right? That's when we first met.
hmm
And then I started to dabble in holistic medicine and started working with a holistic doctor and ended up working with him for years and almost 10 years. And that way of living was flowing really well. I loved what I was doing. Every book I picked up was about, health and nutrition and wellness and my music wasn't getting a ton of attention. And I'm going, yeah, well, I came to Nashville to do music. I better write with some people and maybe I'll create more music. And it wasn't flowing really easy in that lane. So looking back at it now, I'm going, well, we want to go where the flow is happening, and that's
hmm
the attention. And where attention goes, energy flows. And if there's ease, then, hmm, shouldn't that be the lane?
hmm I think
Yeah,
Sarah mentioned it on the chat we did with her. She said sometimes we are talking about what we want to do, but we're not spending any time doing it.
exactly. When we were talking, but like when or someone else said about manifesting. Yeah, we talked about it with Sarah, where the energy goes, where the thought, and you're manifesting it. But if you're wanting to be a musician or you're wanting to be a successful singer, songwriter, artist, and you're not working at it, you're not going to a music lesson, you're not singing every day, you're not listening to music, you know, what are you doing to get there,
Mm-hmm.
to draw that energy to it? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's, yeah.
So listening to the flow of the universe is another way, you know,
Hmm.
and and listening to our intuition. What is that? That it's like our, we talked about it a little bit with Sarah, the inner guidance system. Sarah talked about it as where your life wants to go, listening to where what naturally wants to happen. And
Yeah.
that is, I ask people when they come on retreat with me, it's like, do you want what you want or do you want what you need?
Mm.
Do you want what you want and do you want what you need? And there are half the people that want what they want and half the people that want what they need. And it's perfectly fine. Wherever it is fine for you. I've always been a person, I want what I need. I don't
Hmm.
want what I want anymore because that always used to get me into trouble. And so,
Yeah.
so for many years now, it's like, okay, universe, I'm ready. Whatever it is that I need is just. So
Mm.
listening to that and discerning that and so the way I do it, so say, and you can do it for small things or big things. I feel like when you learn to listen to intuition and the flow of your life with small things, that's easier because it's the same energy as with bigger things. So for instance, for flights for me, and trips, if I'm gonna go to Canada in the summer, which I go every year, I'm like, okay, the summer's wide open. I usually don't book any bliss days or anything in the summer because everybody's out of town anyway. So I've got 2 months I can choose from when to go. When do I go? And so I'll start looking at tickets and I'll just feel into where is there a good flight, the routing that I want, the price that I want. And I'll watch over a couple of days and I'll just look for the flow. I'll
Hmm.
look for the flow. If I've got a choice of a couple of things and I'm trying to figure out, I look for where the flow is going.
Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah, that sounds like you're wholehearted. I'm wholehearted. I'm invested. I need to get to Canada. My heart's pulling me there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think also there's you have the thought. It's like when we were talking about even traveling or doing something together, we go, "Oh, that sounds good." It's almost like there's a feeling with it first,
Mm-hmm.
and then it grows from that. And then when we look at the tickets or, oh, there's a seat sale and or
Mm-hmm.
there's, this connection is easy and if we go to this and then all of a sudden it's like, "Oh yeah, let's do that." And there's a flow to it. But when it
Mm-hmm.
earlier we were supposed to travel somewhere, Strat and I back last month, and as we got looking at flights we were like, oh, that's challenging. um
It's not
that one's
flowing.
not working, it wasn't
Mm-hmm.
flowing, so we're like, well, we'll look at it again later. And
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of like what we do if we get stuck with a thought that isn't, it's not flowing, it's not going anywhere. It's like, well, then park it and look at it later.
Mm-hmm.
Don't start getting frustrated and like just really, that's deep listening, right? I
Yes.
think.
Yes, that's a great way to put it. Park it and look at it later. Because I know many people who try to. Oh, they get really, they're almost gripping on white knuckling. I
Yeah.
want to go at this time. And so they try to force it. And typically, if you try to force it, like you can make it happen, but there's usually something that happens where you're like, you know what, it probably would have been better where, this other time or whatever it was, or you have to end up
Mhm.
changing the ticket because somebody's sick or whatever it is, or there's a
Yeah.
flight gets canceled and. I mean,
Yeah.
you're still and going with the flow doesn't mean, and if you're listening to the flow and you've made some decisions, it doesn't mean that everything's always going to be easy and happy
No,
and joyful.
that's right. That's right.
Because
No,
life,
no.
yeah,
Yeah.
life is dynamic, you
Yeah.
know? And just like a flower that comes out in the spring is going to have all kinds of things to deal with weather, with animals, with soil. Well, that's how we are too. I mean, we're made up of the same stuff as the plants are. We eat, our body turns into the food, our body turns our body after we eat the food. And so
Yeah.
we are in nature. And so what life is going to happen.
Hmm.
So so because sometimes people will like follow a sign or an intuition, and then they'll get mad because things don't turn out the way like they wanted to. And it's really coming into a deep acceptance of what's happening in your life. It's like life is
Mhm.
always going to happen. There's always going to be difficulties, there's going to be challenges, there's going to be joys, there's going to be ease, there's going to be all of it.
Mhm.
And the way we flow with the ease and flow with the challenges is, I feel like, what hopefully happens naturally as we get older. Certainly happens, on the path that I've been on, being more trying to be more self-aware, um, and then maybe a little bit of both, you know, because
Yeah, when
because
yeah, sorry, when you just said the inner and the outer world, right? They match up and they really do. And I was listening to something the other day and the gal mentioned, our and I've said some of these kind of I love comparing things to how our bodies and our cells and respond to everything from toxins to what we eat to I mean we're processing all the time stuff.
Mhm,
So I love it when we see, like someone said, say California, California. Okay, so California, there's blackouts and there's fires and there's fear, and they started listing all this stuff, and if you compare that to the body, well, there's blackouts, there's anxiety, there's fear, there's fire, there's inflammation, right? It's but it moves, it changes, it's forever shifting. It's in that present moment, that's what's happening, and then we're dealing with it the best we can, and we're moving through it, and there's we get back into that flow then of our human existence of what we're doing, and without thinking too far ahead and too far back, we're just moving with it.
mhm,
So it's so cool when you compare the two, that because that's
mhm,
where we're all connected, we're so
mhm,
interconnected.
mhm,
I love the saying of the if when you pull at the earth pulls back at you.
mm. It's
If
beautiful, yeah,
in it, like
yeah,
we're all connected. So it's respectful. It's so authentic when we're listening to somebody and we're really listening.
mhm,
And I know as I've gotten older, that's been a practice of mine because it wasn't my early conditioning.
mhm, yeah.
It
But
was like I
you did it beautiful. You've always done it beautifully as a doctor.
Yes, yes, because it was important. It's
Mhm,
important. But when it's with our friendships, right? It doesn't have to just be in your work. You need to apply that to your
mhm,
friendships, to your family, to
mhm,
what's in front of you, what's in this moment, in that present moment. You actually have active, engaged, can be empathic, can be authentic, it can be, right? It's wholehearted, it's all of that.
mm,
Deep trusting, listening, deep
mhm,
listening.
yeah,
It's such a gift.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm,
Hmm.
it's a good topic. I think it's something that we are constantly unfolding and getting better at, just like being more present in our lives. It's, it makes, it's like, it's where the joy is, because the joy is in the present moment. The joy
Mm-hmm.
is in the connections. And so when
Mm-hmm.
we work on this and we talk about this and we are aware of where when we are not listening, whether it's to another person or to our own lives, and then the great thing is about it, we can choose differently in the next moment.
And even to ourselves, listening
Yes.
to yourself, that
Mhm.
deep active listening, which is the
Mhm.
meditation. That
It
is,
is a meditation, and
yes,
yeah, and I've
it is
gotten
a
better
med.
at it with meditation. Yeah. And
Yeah.
yeah, deep listening to your own life, to your own flow.
Yes, to your own
Just
body. Like your
mhm.
body is going to tell you if it's not optimal. It'll
Mhm.
tell you. And if you're listening, then a symptom is something yelling at you, right? So If it's pain, it's yelling. If it's, a rash, it's yelling. And if you're okay with that, then you're okay, you'll live with that. But are you listening?
Mhm.
So we have optimal health when we check all the boxes of what we figure optimal health is, because it's different
Mhm.
for everybody.
Mhm. Oh, yeah, I mean,
So
I'd listen every day, what do I want to have in the morning? And it changes,
absolutely.
sometimes my body doesn't want anything, or sometimes I want yerba mate, sometimes I want black tea, you know?
Exactly. Exactly. And there is no rule. Sometimes we get into a habit of thinking we want something and then we do without it for a little bit. And then we go, I don't really, I'm not in the mood for that. What am I in the mood for? And your body will tell you, especially if it's in optimal health or it's really, you're in your flow, right? You're
Mhm.
feeling good, right? Yeah. Which is we've had lots of topics around that, but yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, when you're not listening to your body and you're eating crap, then it's like a cycle because then you're not you eat crap and the GPS kind of gets a little bit of dissonance in it and you're not able to listen so well
Hmm.
because
Yep.
it gets clogged.
Yes.
Yeah.
And as we get older, we start going, okay, I got to listen more now because my body's really screaming at me
Mhm.
and I have to do this. I have to change this. If I
Mhm.
want to sleep better, or if I want to, walk that hill without being out of breath, or if I want to get my blood pressure down, or if I want to get my lab work improved, or right,
Mhm.
my waist circumference, lesser. So that's deep listening too,
Mhm. Yep.
right? Yeah.
Mhm.
It's a good conversation.
Yeah, I like that. Like that
Hmm.
topic.
Yeah,
That's
thanks for
yeah.
that.
You're
Hey,
welcome.
you have some good ideas.
So do you.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. See you next time, Ed. Love you.
Love you and thanks for listening.